when we reminisce about clubbing, we reminisce about those nights in that space. And I know that has everything to do with the music, the memory, who you were around, the drugs we took, the people we fell in love with, the people we went home and fucked with, all of those things. We miss that.
Hello, I am Kay Anderson, and you are listening to Lost Spaces, the podcast that mourns the death of queer nightlife. Every episode, I talk to a different person about a venue from their past, the memories they created there, and the people that they used to know. This week, we are visiting Queer Nation. Inspired by the American activist group of the same name, Queer Nation was a club night that started in London in 1990 and quickly built a reputation as an attitude-free, affordable, and welcoming night that played the best in soulful house music. And here to tell us why the night was so close to his heart is the activist, health promoter, and mentor, Marc Thompson. As well as being an absolute sweetheart, Marc has an incredibly impressive CV, which includes being the co-director of the Love Tank CIC, as well as co-founder of both Prepster and Blackout UK. We talk all about the use of the word queer, being picked up at the bus stop, and dancing shirtless and sweaty on the dance floor.
Well, I mean, I think for me as a black gay man living in London, my choices were even slimmer, because the big venues, one, they weren't necessarily playing the music that I wanted to hear or many of the men that were like me listened to. So high energy and that commercial pop music wasn't something that me or my friends wanted to hear. A lot of the clubs that were open, be they Heaven, the scene was really heavily in Earl's Court. And there were one or two underground clubs, still were quite racist, so they either had racist door policies or you would go there and you'd feel really unwelcomed as a black person. You'd be fetishized. You may only be the only black person in the club. So there was all of these factors in the mainstream commercial scene, which were not necessarily appealing. And then you had the small local pubs to go to, which were all over London, which were amazing. So in Brixton, we had the Prince of Wales, Clapham, the Two Brewers, the Union in the Camberwell, the Market Tavern in Vauxhall. But what was really special about those is that they then had specific nights that you could go to, and then they would cater to the tastes of black gay communities and black queer communities. So the music would be blacker, the DJs would be blacker, it would just attract a much different audience. So the scene was commercial, it was growing, but if you were young and black and queer, there was very, very few spaces for you to really go out and enjoy yourself and feel safe.
Can we talk about the racist door policies? I mean, was it this weird thinking that people had at the time that was well, you're either black or you're gay, but you can't be both?
Yeah, absolutely that. And I think that, I've got to add in there, it's not so much at the time, that is still ever present today. And I know lots of young...
Do you think?
Absolutely. Oh,
wow.
I know black queer people that go to clubs and face racism at the door. I've experienced it in recent years.
It's so horrible.
Imagine you go to the club, You've built up all of this energy, all of this. You might be really nervous. It might be your first time. You get there and you think, okay, I'm going to be safe here. And the first question you're asked at the door is, do you know this is a gay club? Now, to most people, they may just go, that's no big deal. They're just checking for safety and all the rest of it. But I've seen you let 5 white guys in and you didn't question them. We also have to be aware of how we might dress. If we're in hoodies or trainers, and all of these sorts of things can be used against us.
Yeah, there's always extra layers.
Yeah, if there are 5 black guys that turn up at a club door, I guarantee you they're going to get a lot more hassle than 5 white gay men that will turn up. So these are real live issues that we experienced. And so we had to go and create our own spaces. And then even when we did get access to some of the big clubs like Heaven, we'd be shoved upstairs into the small bar, because black people don't buy drinks, So there's all of these stories in the LGBT scene, which meant that black folk had to go and create their own spaces. I mean, it has definitely changed. There are more of us now. We are in a much more accepting, less bigoted society. And clubs like Queer Nation helped to change the scene, helped to change that perspective and to change the way that it looked. But there are still young black queer people who have to and feel the need to create the space. They will go to Dalston Superstore. They will go to the Glory. They'll engage in their mix, but they will still want their own spaces. That's why clubs like Bootylicious, Urban World, they are still necessary because and sometimes it's just down to the music.
Yeah.
Sometimes people just want to hear black music in those spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. Queer Nation.
Yeah.
You went to the very first night.
I did.
Do you remember anything about that night?
I remember it wasn't really packed and it wasn't busy, but it was such a vibe. And it was the music. I mean, I'd discovered, Chicago and New York house music a couple of years before, funnily enough, in Heaven. And I just wanted to be in a space. And I remember going to my best friend at the time and just dancing and just being like blown away by this amazing sound system, this underground space, which just felt really new. And just the vibe, because I went back the following week. I couldn't wait to get back the following week.
So vibe is a little vague for me.
Is it?
Can you unpack that?
It's soulful. Other clubs that I'd been to prior to Queer Nation felt like big clubs, that you weren't going there for the music. You were going there to hang with your friends, to meet men, to hook up. When I went to Queer Nation that night, it was the music that was in my soul. That's what I mean by the vibe. It was a small space. There weren't a lot of people there, but there was no attitude. There was no, I'm here to cruise. I'm here to pick up. I need to stand by the bar. People went in. It was small. It was dank. It was dark. And they danced. And that was really new. That, for me, that felt really, really new. That you would go to a space just to dance, not to pick up.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because terrible conversationalist, and even worse in a club where there's lots of loud music and no one can hear me and I can't hear them. Listen to how soft-spoken I am. So I would only go to clubs to dance. And it wasn't until later on when I kind of developed some skills in picking up that I used those in nightclubs. So it's interesting it's the other way around for you.
So I suppose for the first few years, and for lots of queer people, and this is pre-Grindr, it's a generation ago. So this was the only way to meet your partners, be they sexual. These were the only places to meet your friends. So whilst you might go out to a pub for a pint, which wasn't necessarily my thing, it was the space where I knew that if I was horny, if I wanted to look for a new boyfriend, it's where these were the spaces that I would go to. So going out every Friday night, I love music and I love dancing, but that wasn't the primary reason. I was quite young. I didn't want to go to gay youth groups. I wasn't necessarily political at the time. So this was the one avenue where I knew I could be with my tribe. So I didn't mind where I went to. But when I went to Queer Nation, the music took over everything. And that became the reason to go there.
And it's kind of easy to pick up on a dance floor as well, right?
Well, exactly. This is it. You've hit the nail on the head. That was the beautiful thing, because you would go, I would certainly go there, know that I'm going to hear my favourite DJs playing my favourite music, and my main focus is dancing and sweating. And if I meet somebody on that dance floor, that's a bonus, because that person is definitely then into the same vibe and the same feel as me. And it's something about connecting on the dance floor, which is different to eyes across a bar. You know, you can bump and grind. They can see your moves.
They can see, yeah, you're grinding. But they can also, like, they already know what you look like really sweaty, so there's no surprises.
Ta-da!
But no, I'm fascinated by this, like what makes a venue or a night or a space feel like home, and what the ingredients are to bring people back. And it's not just the architecture, it's not just the music. There are like all these other factors at play, and that's why I was kind of like prodding you about vibe to better understand.
Well, I mean, I think that, you know, Queer Nation certainly, not on that first night because it was new, but really, really quickly established a family.
Mm-hmm.
It had a consistent roster of DJs. It had the same promoter, Patrick Lilly. It had the same door staff. The door staff were either queer or queer allies. They weren't big bouncers. So from the moment that you got into the space, you were welcomed. It was never, I'm going to get shaken down, patted down. People don't want me here. It was like, get you in the door, right? So that was key. And then really quickly, it established the punters, the people that went there, went every single week. So It was a Sunday night. It was relatively early. It finished about 2-3 o'clock. And it built up that reputation. So you would go every week and you would see the same people time and time again after years. And so it created that family vibe that was in there. And I think what was really important about it was, you know, lots of people and club promoters talk about having clubs, particularly, you know, queer male spaces with no attitude. And that always makes me giggle. You know, because, you know, there's always posturing, isn't there, when you go out? There's always a little bit of attitude. That's what we do. But at Queer Nation, that was a genuine thing. It really was a loving space. And this is kind of post the Summer of Love, 1989. So there may have been a few, you know, ecstasy pills involved in all of that.
A few.
But it was genuinely... Well, you know, I mean, I personally didn't come to that party till a little bit later. So I was quite sober when I went to QN in those early days, and I was younger. But it was really, you knew everybody that went there. And later on down the line, I mean, I'll take a leap. When it moved to Brixton, and me and my mates would go there every single Saturday from about 2001 to 2004, we were known, there were about 6 of us, for walking in as a clique and standing in front of the DJ booth. And whoever was there would move out of the way because it was our spot.
So hang on. Didn't you just tell me there was no attitude?
No, but the thing is this, right? You got to check it out, right? Because look, we were like 6 or 7, 30-something guys in the prime. You know, we were all kind of cute, kind of hot. And we'd rock up, and like one person would get there. We'd like take a little spot in front of the DJ booth, and then people would just be like, "Oh, the boys are here." And it wasn't bad. People were like, "Oh, the boys are here." You know what I mean? And we would just hold court, dance, get our tops off, you know, and just carry on, because it was that kind of space where you could live that. It was so much energy. And for a club to consistently do that for nearly, 15, 16 years, nearly every single week, and only have a couple of breaks in between, that is quite incredible for a club. And that says a lot about, going back to that word, it says a lot about the vibe and the family nature that was created there. And no word of a lie, it was London's most diverse club. And that's the other issue that we should talk about with this.
Okay, let's talk about it then.
Well, before this, you know, because many clubs were, you know, the queer scene or the gay scene in the late 80s was, you know, was in its subculture. So it was overwhelmingly cis, what we would call now cis and male. There were women's clubs left, you know, in other spaces.
Tucked away,
yeah. And the gay men kind of had the big kind of commercial spaces. But when Queer Nation comes along, and we've already spoken about where people of colour are, and where Queer Nation comes along, it truly is a queer club. You know, it is not overwhelmingly gay and male. There are men, there are women, there are trans people, you know, there are what we would now define, or people might define themselves as non-binary. You know, it was a space which was open to anybody, and you felt that there, you know, it was renowned for that, and that continued throughout the years.
And how do you think that was achieved? Is that down to Patrick as the promoter, or the venues that they were held in?
I think it was because I think Patrick did a lot around that, you know, just by simply promoting it as Queer Nation, and, you know, the promotional materials and the promo not being overwhelmingly male. The fact that they had, you know, a mixed setup of DJs, so Princess Julia with a long clubbing history, Luke Howard, Merron, Breeze, all of these DJs had already come from clubs that had played to mixed crowds. So they brought that audience with them. And then again, the reputation builds up that all are welcomed here. And I think that was really important, you know, that if you put that out, then it starts to draw people in. I would often go there with girlfriends, you know. It was that kind of space. It was really safe to do that.
And can we talk about the use of the word queer? Because, like, currently that word has lost, well, from my perspective at least, that word has lost its charged nature, and people use it quite freely. But at that time, it would have been quite a strong word to use, at least in 1990 when the club started. Do you remember anyone having any opposition to it?
I don't think, I don't recall anybody having any opposition to the name of the club. I'm sure there may have been people that might have taken umbrage to it. But by that point, Queer Nation, the radical political movement in San Francisco, was already up and running. So I think that there was probably, and of course, you know, if you attach it to a club which is kind of like, you know, a silly fun night out on paper, you know, then that, I'm trying to think of the word, that probably uncharges it a little bit. You know, if you call it Queer Nation, it's a fun night out. And again, I certainly, as a gay man going there, didn't claim the title queer at all. I mean, I didn't claim the title queer until about, 10 minutes ago. No, sorry, until about 2-3 years
in preparation for this interview.
Yeah. No, but in gay years, probably 10 minutes ago, but just a couple of years ago. And I still describe myself as a gay man within the queer family, right? That's maybe a whole different conversation. But I think that at the time, with Queer Nation, the club, I don't recall there being any pushback, but in hindsight, it was creating a queer nation. And it was a queer nation that took place within that sweaty dance floor. So maybe if that was Patrick's intention or not, it certainly was the result of it. Mm-hmm.
And so I've written this down. I probably shouldn't have. Let's just see where this conversation goes. But dancing topless.
Yeah.
Now, it's brilliant in the fact that you don't have to plan an outfit to go out in, but touching
yes, you
other.
do.
Well, no, because you're just going to take it off.
No.
Okay, break it down.
No.
Come on.
Oh, you still, because a t-shirt is everything, right? Because you still got to walk in the club. You still got to have a nice little t-shirt to show off. When I was a bit more muscular. Yeah, so the t-shirt says who you are. It's all that kind of stuff. It's the whole thing.
You could just wear a white t-shirt because you're taking off. Who cares?
You could just wear it. Yeah, occasionally you could just wear a white t-shirt. Sometimes you need to do a little bit logo. Got to mix it up.
So what would you do?
I would vary it. I'd have a different t-shirt. I'd buy nice t-shirts, nice polo. Yeah, because my top isn't off all the time, is it?
Well,
I built up to taking my top off.
Oh, okay. So at what point do you know it's time to take your top off?
Oh, you shouldn't do it too early. So certainly not within the first. Listen, first of all, right, this is many years ago, children. I'm not doing this anymore. You also
why
know
not?
There becomes a certain there's a certain age where you stop taking the top off as well. Anyway, well, this one has.
No, don't listen to this ageist nonsense. You can take your top off whenever you want.
You can. You all can take your tops off whenever you want. This particular daddy is keeping his top off. No, but when I used to go out, it would never be within the first hour. Definitely not. You know what I mean? Because I like to, be around, hang out with your mates and all that. It's not necessarily, it's when the music hits you. You feel when it's time to take your top off. You feel it. I go back to that vibe thing because, as I said, I'm all about the music. And so if I'm out and I'm dancing and I was in QN and the music hit me, I'd be like, oh yeah, now is the time. And then it would off it would come.
The music is telling me to take my clothes off.
The music is telling me to take my... I mean, there's a Pet Shop Boys song, right, called The Boy Who Couldn't Keep His Clothes On. I love dancing. And that used to be my theme tune because, I used to love getting my top off and dance at Queer Nation. I was known for it.
But okay, so it's fine to look at people dancing topless. It's just when they get really close to you and they're all sweaty and you're all sweaty, that is gross.
It is gross. And I'm trying to demonstrate with my hands right now, people, but I have a barrier around me. I have an invisible box when I go out, and dare the man that steps inside that box without an invitation. I do. And my friends know it, and I'm all right with my friends, but I give a look, I turn my body in a particular direction, whatever it is, but I'm like, no, you need to step back.
Well, that is all good and well. That is all good and well until it's very, very busy, and then there's no space.
There's always space.
Okay, so what do you do then if someone encroaches on your personal, your zone? How do you get rid of them?
Well, that's an interesting one. That's part of the reason why I got a little bit fed up with going clubbing as I got older, because I got a little bit less tolerant of it. I think I'm all right with people, invading my personal space when I'm out dancing, with top on or top off. But
when do you have your top on?
Oh, my top's on mostly these days. But I also think that there's also something about respecting people when you go out. Okay, so we can all flay around the dance floor and lose ourselves and all of the rest of it. But there is something about respecting somebody's space. And I get that you might bump into me, and if I say, hey, me and my friends are dancing here, but if your dancing is so exaggerated and you've lost yourself that you're taking up somebody else's enjoyment, then that's disrespectful.
Oh, yeah,
we can all lose our shit.
I absolutely agree that that's totally disrespectful. But if someone is really fucking drunk and is just not getting the hint that they're in your space, how do you manage that?
I have learned now to move away, to find another space.
But you're in front of the DJ booth. That's your spot.
Oh no! Listen. Back in the listen. Nobody came within that space unless we invited them, and they were usually cute boys.
Oh, so how do you is there a beckoning with the fingers?
Oh, it's the eye. It's the eye. Beckon with the eye. I beckon with the eye. Actually, no, I shake my shimmy, actually.
They could tell by the way you were glistening. Yeah.
Really?
I find dance floors really interesting to navigate.
I mean, that's, again, one of the reasons why I really loved Queer Nation in the different spaces it went to and in the different guises it had. Because it was so much about the music and so much emphasis that was put on that even when it became much more male, when it moved to Substation in Brixton and a little bit heavier, and it was later and it was on Saturday nights, it got, much more druggy because we were doing lots more ecstasy then. There was still space to breathe. It was still a really enjoyable night out. Whereas there are some other clubs I've been to where it is that jostling, it is tops off, and we're all in this together, mate. Ooh. And nobody cares about the music. It's all about, come on, You know what I mean? I'm pumped up on ecstasy and steroids, and I've got all my tribal tattoos, and come on, mate, all that. Whereas Queer Nation, it was like, nah, girl, come on, do you hear that Barbara Tucker sample? Woo, woo. That's what that was about. Completely different vibe, man. Totally different.
And you said that like when it went to Substation, it became a bit druggier and kind of male only. Do you know kind of what the factors were? I mean, just more people were taking drugs, and that's why it became druggier. But why was Substation more of a male venue?
Yeah, it was very male. It was that underground, boots on, knicker night one night, you know, hardcore night another night. I think
Wait, what? Knicker night? What was the first?
We used to call it knicker night. It was underwear night.
Oh, okay.
Monday night. Yeah, we used to call it or if you were French, it was the panty night. But yeah, Monday night was underwear night. And so it was open 7 days a week, I think, and each night was different, and Queer Nation was on a Saturday. So most of those nights were quite male. So I think that probably just carried over. Not to say it wasn't mixed, but it wasn't as mixed as...
Yeah. There was a noticeable difference, yeah.
Yeah, and I think you're right, that in the early 2000s, the late 90s, early 2000s, we saw, you know, a massive increase in the use of party drugs, you know, cocaine, ecstasy, ketamine, really hitting the scene. That's where you got all the big super clubs like DTPM, Home, The End, all of those things started to happen as well. Mm-hmm. But Queer Nation in Substation, the music was still the same. It was bigger, harder, louder, because it was a Saturday night. It was a night out, you know, so Sunday you'd be home in bed by 3 and back at work. Whereas on the Saturday night, you know, 5, 6 o'clock and you're going to a chill out. So it was very, very different.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a very different prospect, isn't it? Mm. Can you imagine going out clubbing like next week till 2 o'clock and then on a Sunday night and then coming home, going to bed for a few hours and then working the next day?
No, not on your life. Not on your life. Not on your life.
Isn't it bizarre?
I was 22, you know.
Yeah. But you're just like, yeah, this sounds reasonable. Let's off we go.
I'm just like, what time are we going to get there for? You know what I mean? And it would never even cross my mind. I mean, I must admit, there were a few Monday mornings where I didn't make it into work. You know, I'm not going to lie. But more often than not, I did. But, that's what you did. You know, there were loads of nights during the week where I would go out and then still go to work the following day. I was a big party boy.
Did it make you less likely to take someone home?
If it was on a Sunday?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I wasn't less likely. But it happened less frequently.
Because of them?
I think because of both of everybody, you know. So everybody's like, oh, no, I've got to go to work on the Monday morning, I'll get your number.
But the thing is, like, it is horrific. Like, it is horrific to do that and then, like, have to go to work the next day. But there's a built-in excuse to leave.
There is. That's so true. I never
just saying.
Not to work.
I'd love to stay and like find out more about you and have breakfast with you and awkward conversation, but I've got to go to work. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't remember. I must admit, I think I probably came home or pulled more at Queer Nation on a Saturday night than I did when it was a Sunday.
Oh, but it's hard to compare though, because it's like there's like 10 years difference, right?
Yeah. But one's a Saturday night and one's a Sunday.
Yeah, but you were probably like in a different life stage. No?
No. It's me you're talking to. No.
What? So you've not changed your worldview at all since you were...
I know my worldview has changed, but no. What I mean is that what I'm saying is that I was just as likely to meet... If Queer Nation had been on a Saturday night in the early 90s, in the same way it was in the noughties, I would have gone home with people on a Saturday night.
Well, so you've just always been really smooth and confident?
Yeah, pretty much.
This whole show is about your trauma and like, you know, how when you were a child you were just so messed up and screwed in the head, and I'm not going to get any of that from you.
No. I came kicking out that closet door at 16 and found the clubs, loved music, loved men, and the thing is I was, I say it a lot, but I was very, very lucky insofar as my family were incredibly supportive of me as a young gay man, and allowed me to go out into the world and explore, and didn't put any kind of, pressures on me. They wanted me to be, my family wanted me to be safe, they wanted me to be secure, and they provided the things around me to do so. So I was able to then go out and, party and dance and meet boys and fall in and out of love and have lots of sex and do the things that straight young people get to do.
And you were born and bred Londoner, that very rare breed.
I'm from Brixton, yeah.
So that is like mind-blowing. Like if I was 16 and had access to all of those clubs in London, I don't know if I would have finished school.
No, I mean, the thing is, I was studying. I was at college doing my studying film, doing my O-levels and A-levels. And I was always a quite, out there, confident kid who was really, really sociable even before I came out. And when I went to college, I was the same and made friends really easily. And it's not a boast. It's just who I am. And so when I came out, I met other black gay men within a couple of weeks of me telling my family that I was gay. So I was lucky in that way. So I was introduced into a black gay community with friends. I didn't have to go and negotiate lots of things. I mean, I did have to negotiate the world on my own. I didn't have people holding my hands. But it meant that there were certain points that people helped me through quite early on. And I had a small group of friends who were also my age as well, straight girls usually, that, just stood by me and were as curious about the world as well. So I would go to these little black gay clubs and parties with my girlfriends, other young black straight women who were about my age I went to college with. And we would just be like fascinated. And then all these cute boys would be like, oh, who's this? And I'd be like, okay. So, it was great.
Okay, see your friend from school. So your family was just like, oh, yeah, okay, you're gay. Was it just one of those things that they all knew and they'd kind of had time to come to terms with it before you did?
No, not at all. I mean, it wasn't expected. Just that, and my family were working class. They're Jamaican. My mum's really smart. My dad's really smart, but homosexuality wasn't in their world. They weren't like Guardian reading, radical lefties. They were just regular folk. But for them, loving their children trumped absolutely everything. And sexuality, they may not have understood it, but they knew enough to protect their kids. And that's what it boils down to, right? So I don't understand it. The world doesn't like it, but you're my child, and that's what matters.
So was there like a period where it was a bit weird, or was it just like, I got your back, let's go?
But no, my mum wanted me to get therapy, but only because she wanted to make sure that I was okay.
So not conversion to therapy, just like... No.
She was a social worker, and she was like, look, do you want to talk to somebody, just to make sure, and that kind of thing. So, and then it was just like, take care. And it took a little while for them, and for because, we don't talk about, when we talk about people coming out, whether parents accept or not, there's also some adjustment that we have to do as queer people as well. So if our families do accept us, because we go in expecting them to be so god-awful, that when they do, we still have to do a bit of an adjustment as well, So I had to adjust to my parents, they had to adjust to me, and that took a little bit of time. And also, I was a teenager, I wanted to be out. I didn't want to, so it wasn't just being gay. It's like, I want to be gay and I want to go out partying, I want to drink. And your parents are like, actually, no. So they want to control you because you're a kid. So there's all of that stuff. But it took a little while. But they were then like, yeah, we got your back. Go and do this.
Ah, that's great. What was it like at school then?
Well, school wasn't tough. I mean, it was tough because I went to a really all boys comprehensive school in South London, which was quite rough. And for a good few years, I was all right there. But as I got older, and I realised not that I was different because of my sexuality, I was just different because I wanted different things. I liked art, I liked music, I liked fashion. And the boys in my school, they didn't present, they wanted that. For example, my favourite magazines when I was at school, when I was 15, was The Face and ID. those were my Bibles, right? So it was difficult because I was different in that sense, and I wanted to get out, and I got out as soon as I could. But I also told my best friends, 2 straight boys, and my head of year that I was gay when I was 15, and they were amazing.
Oh,
they were so supportive. So again, my story is quite unusual for that time, but I think it's really important that people hear that, because not all of our stories are horrific, not all of our stories are traumatizing or bad, and that should demonstrate that trust some people around you sometimes. There is love around us. We just have to find the right people sometimes, and I was very lucky.
Yeah, really lucky. So you were hitting the town. You were like, right, I'm 16. It's about time I got out and had a drink and found out things. Were you going to actual bars or just parties?
Initially, I went to. I had just I knew people through my first boyfriend, and then I started when I went to college to do my O-level. There was a pub in King's Cross called The Bell. Mm-hmm. And me and some friends I'd made at college who were a little bit radical, we all thought we were really radical. We weren't really. And we would go to The Bell at lunchtime because you could drink between 12 and 3 then before the pubs closed. And found it was a gay pub. And that's where I started to go on my own. And it had an indie night. And I kind of liked indie music then. And there and the Prince of Wales and Brixton were my 2 spaces initially. And then I slowly started to meet and make more friends and go to different places.
And no one was like, you look suspiciously young.
Walked straight in. Yeah, especially in the pubs. Wow. Nobody asked for your ID. And I didn't have this grey beard. I mean, I was baby-faced. I look at pictures of me now and I look about 13, but I was really young.
And so were you going there really confidently and just kind of striking up conversations with people, or were you just I don't know how any of this works, I hope someone shows me the way?
I think if I remember rightly, I just grabbed the bull by the horns. I think when I went to pubs, I was always a little bit nervous, a little bit anxious, that whole thing of, is somebody going to see me going in? Although I was relatively out to my family, I wasn't out to the world. So there's all that sort of thing. And, and also, this is a time of deep homophobia in this country. Violent homophobia, right? So one risked, getting attacked or beaten up going in or coming out of a gay pub. So that is the other factor you've got to bear in mind. Being a young black man out on the streets after a certain time, I could get pulled up by the police, not because I'm gay, but because I'm a black man. So there's all of these factors. So once you've got over that, you have no choice. I had no choice but to stride in like I own the goddamn place. Because you've got to be back up. I've got to do this, or else they'll smell your fear. That was my attitude.
I mean, that's the best attitude to have.
I know I sound a lot tougher than I am, listeners.
I would just be like, "Here's my fear. Have a whiff."
Nah, not me, mate. Nah, not me. But yeah, so I used to go to a few of those places. Yeah.
And then, so did you start being sexual very quickly?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I wasn't that kid that explored, the cottages or cruising grounds, or was like, oh no, I need to experiment, or I'm going to touch dick before I go to a nightclub. No, I wasn't that kid. I was like, right, I'm out, going to get me a boyfriend. We're going to have a boyfriendy relationship, and then that's it. And that's how I rolled. It wasn't about experimenting with the world. That came much later.
Who was the first boyfriend, if it's okay to ask?
Well, I won't name him.
Make up a name.
He's still alive and he's still around. Let's call him the model.
The model, okay.
Because he was 6 foot something or the other, incredibly beautiful, absolutely stunning. And I was surprised to meet him. I was surprised he gave me a second glance. And he was only a couple of years older than me as well, which was quite nice.
And you met him where?
In the Elephant and Castle. One evening on my way home from work, my part-time job when I was 16. Good old cruising. Those were the days, boys and girls, when you could go to a bus stop and meet your first love. Do you remember those times, children?
Were there, so wait. So designated bus stops or just like you would just like stare at someone?
Yeah, this is the leather bus stop.
No. Like,
no.
you know, sometimes like it's
joking.
like, this is where you go cruising, like behind this bus stop on here. Was it just like...
Yeah, no. I didn't know about, I'm sure there were those places, but I didn't know about any of those places. So I was just on my way home from work one evening. Okay, full disclosure. Somebody tried to cruise me. I didn't know they were cruising me the week before on the tube. But I picked up the homosexual signals. I'm 15, coming up to 16. And
how do you... Oh my God, you're so naive then. How did you pick it up?
Well, you know, I mean, you just do.
What, did he have his dick in his hand? What was happening?
No, you're just on a train and somebody's giving you the eye.
Oh, I just assume they want to beat me up. Okay, sorry, carry on.
Right.
So it happened to you the week before.
It happened to me the week before, and I didn't follow through because I was shit scared. I didn't know what this man. I didn't know. And I went home and I regretted it. I was like, I should have followed it through. And I said, if that ever happens to me again, I'm not going to be nervous. I'm not going to be nervous. And a couple of weeks later, I'm coming home, and I'm at the bus stop, and I look, and he looks, and I look, and he looks. I don't know who broke the conversation. I was reading a book. That was it. I was reading a book, and the book was called The Milkman's on His Way.
Oh, David Rees? No, Rees, someone.
That's it, David Rees. Yeah, a gay young adult fiction novel. And I was reading it, and he said to me, "What are you reading?" And I showed him, and he was like, "Oh, okay." And then that was it.
Ah.
And we swapped numbers, and I fell giddily, headily, madly in love for 5 minutes.
For 5 minutes. But that is so smooth and brazen.
Maybe, yeah, maybe. But you know, as I said, you know, I'm not an arrogant man. I'm not, you know, boastful or anything like that. I'm just being brought up to be confident and standing my truth.
So I am moving on. So I'm not going to ask too many questions about this man who I can't remember what we've called him. What did we call him?
We called him the model.
Oh, the model.
We called him the model.
Were you then just like going like, I want to say going from boyfriend to boyfriend, and I don't mean that in a like, were you just being a big slag? Mm. I just mean like, were you like in love with the idea of love?
For a few years, yes. For a few years. I mean, I certainly, in those first year or so, I certainly didn't go from boyfriend to boyfriend because I didn't know where to meet men as such until the time between that boyfriend and my next was probably 7 months.
Oh, okay.
You know, because I didn't know where to go to meet guys. And as I said, you know, I wasn't going to go cottaging or cruising. But when I did meet somebody, which was usually at a bar or a pub, I would get really sort of like, oh my gosh, you know, this is going to be, you know, the love of my life. And then, you know, we knock the boots, you know, and I'd be like, oh, okay, I'm bored of this now. Next. And then I'd go out again because I didn't realise, you see, at such a young age, I didn't understand that one could just have sex, you know. Of
course,
I was, and it was. I mean, I don't want to label it this, heteronormative. I don't want to label it that. It was just.
But it was that, like it.
Well, maybe,
it was that. Like you were conditioned to think that there was one person out there, and that one person was for you.
Yeah,
and that they would complete you, and off you go, have a look for them. Like so, of course, you were thinking that.
Yeah, maybe. Well, it quickly changed.
Yeah, there's like 1,700 for me. And I'm still looking. I told you we were going to go like completely off topic. And we have. Do you remember hearing about Queer Nation closing? Or like the final night was coming?
The final night of its last iteration in Brixton. Yeah, I do. I do remember. I don't remember exactly when, but I do remember.
Mm-hmm. And what did that feel like?
It felt like the end of an era. It was really, really sad. Because it did pick up after somewhere else. But it had been such an institution in Brixton. And I live in Brixton as well. So to have that special place on my doorstep for so long was also really important. It was my local. That's what it felt like when your local pub closes. That's what Queer Nation closing down felt like for me. It was, because it just held so many amazing memories, not just for me, but for me and my group of friends. It was a group of friends that built around that space over so many years. And we grew up in it, both iterations, both Gardening Club, and I could talk about those two, Gardening Club and Substation South. You know, we grew up in those spaces.
Mm-hmm. What did London lose when it lost Queer Nation?
Places like Queer Nation, because this is at the height of the epidemic in the UK, that Queer Nation opens in 1990, right? We're bang in the middle of it here. And that place is a lifesaver because it gives us young, gay, LGBTQ people a space to release, to let go, to forget about our friends who are dying, those of us that are ill, the shitty press that's attacking us that is violent, the homophobia that's potential on the streets. We can go there for those 5 hours on a Sunday and transport ourselves somewhere magical and different. And we're not even leaving the Gardening Club because the love is in that room. The love is there, and that's what saved us. So as a positive man, when I went to Queer Nation, it was my safe bubble. And that was profound, you know, because outside of the world, outside of that space, and that's why those queer spaces, even if the big commercial mainstream spaces that played high energy that I may not have loved, through to QN, they were the safest spaces for queer people at that time. And we found joy, we found love, we found community in that dance floor, in that church. And many of us sometimes found salvation. When I'm at my lowest ebb and I go in that dance floor and I listen to Crystal Waters' Gypsy Woman or Barbara Tucker, Beautiful People, or some classic Loletta Holloway, that was all that was played at QN, I can lose my shit and everything else matters. You transcend. And that is why that space in particular, Queer Nation, will always be my church. Always.
Did you ever go to Queer Nation? Well, if you did, I would love to hear from you. Tell me your stories and share any photos or anecdotes that you have from that time. You can reach me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram with the username KAndersonMusic. And there are bonus points if you have any photos of Marc topless dancing. You can also follow Marc on Twitter. His profile name is MarcT_01, and that is Marc with a C, not a K. And I've also included links to the Love Tank, Blackout UK, and Prepster in the show notes for the program. Lost Spaces is not only a podcast, but a concept record as well. I have been writing songs about queer venues and the people who used to live their lives there, and will be releasing songs over the next year. You can hear the first single, which is called Well Groomed Boys and is playing underneath my talking right now on all good streaming platforms. If you enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate if you subscribed, left a review on Apple Podcasts, or just told other people who you think might be interested in giving it a little listen too. I am Kay Anderson, and you have been listening to Lost Spaces.